Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed your time off. Today we'll be going over material from chapters 20, 22, 25, and 29. We'll be looking at human anatomy as well as plant anatomy and hopefully seeing some similarities between the two. Your body has several organ systems that play an important role in maintaining the internal environment of your body, called homeostasis. These systems can be divided into 5 groups: transport of fluids throughout the body, maintenance of the body, control of the body's systems, sensory input, motor input, and reproduction. The transport organ systems involve the cardiovascular system, the lymphatic system, and the immune system. The cardiovascular system is made up of the heart, blood vessels, and the blood. The blood is used to transport oxygen using hemoglobin and nutrients, like glucose, to all the cells of the body. When the blood reaches the cells, it will take away the cell's waste, like carbon dioxide, from the fluid in between the cells, which is called the interstitial fluid. The cardiovascular system can be compared to the motor proteins and the microtubules of the cell. The motor proteins are responsible for transporting vesicles or organelles around the cell. The lymphatic system is made up of lymphatic vessels, lymph nodes, lymph, which is the fluid running through those lymph vessels. The lymphatic system absorbs fat from your digestive tract and collects excess interstitial fluid from the body. It also has an important role in the immune system, since the system contains white blood cells. The respiratory system, urinary system, and digestive systems are responsible for adding needed substances to the body, or getting rid of substances the body no longer needs. The respiratory system includes the lungs, trachea, and other structures that brings oxygen into the body and breathe out carbon dioxide, which is a cellular waste. The urinary system consists of the kidneys, bladder, urethra, and the accessory organs. The primary job of the urinary system is to get rid of any waste product from the blood and regulate the fluid and chemical contents of the blood. Your kidneys are what filter your blood and decide what substances need to leave the bloodstream. For example, if your blood glucose is too high, then your kidneys will filter out the extra sugar in your urine, which is the case for people with diabetes mellitus. Your digestive system is made up of your teeth, saliva, esophagus, stomach, pancreas, liver, and intestines. Its main role is to digest food and absorb all the nutrients it can. Each section of the digestive system is responsible for digesting a particular type of molecule or molecules. The liver, pancreas, and salivary glands aid in the chemical digestion of food by providing various enzymes meant to break down a specific molecule. The teeth and stomach provide mechanical digestion of the stomach, so it breaks down into smaller parts, which allows the enzymes to digest more molecules. A digestive system can be compared to the mitochondria in the cell, which breaks down glucose into ATP, a form of energy that the cell can use for all of its different processes. Two systems involved in regulating the other systems of the body include the nervous and the endocrine system. The nervous system consists of the brain, the spinal cord, and various nerves. These are responsible for communication between and control of the various organ systems. When you hear a sound, it's the nerves in your ear that send this signal to your brain, where this nerve impulse is understood to be a sound. When your oxygen levels are low, it's your brain that sends a signal to your lungs to take in oxygen. The nervous system can be compared to the nucleus of the cell. The nucleus is responsible for the control and regulation of the cell. The effects of the nervous system tend to not be very long. The hormones and the other chemicals of the endocrine system have a much longer lasting effect than the nervous system does. The endocrine system is a series of glands that secrete hormones that serve as messengers between the body. For example, two hormones called estrogen and progesterone are responsible for regulating a woman's monthly period. The integumentary system, skeletal system, and muscular system are responsible for protecting and supporting your body. The integumentary system consists of skin, nails, and sensory organs like the eyes and ears. The skin is important in keeping out bacteria or viruses and protecting your internal organs. Your sensory provides communication from the outside world to the inside of the body. If you smell smoke and see a fire, this communicates to your body to run to the nearest phone to call 911. The integumentary system can be likened to the plasma membrane, which helps protect the internal organelles of the cell. And as well as the proteins help provide communication from the outside of the cell to the inside of the cell. The skeletal system consists of all your bones, while the muscular system consists of all your muscles. These two systems work together to provide movement to your body based on the signals it receives from the internal system. These two systems are also responsible for providing structural support to your body. The skeletal system can be likened to the cytoskeleton of the cell, which provides structural support to the cell. The muscular system can be compared to the motor protein actin, which lies just underneath the cell membrane, offering extra structural support to the cell. Every organism needs to produce in one way or another. The reproductive system allows humans to conceive and give birth to offspring. The reproductive organs are different in both male and female. The testes of the male and the ovaries of the female play a similar role in that these produce the gametes used to create a baby. The other organs in the female reproductive system are more complex than the male's, including the oviducts, uterus, and vagina. These organs are responsible for providing a safe place for the embryo to grow into a baby. The other organs in the male reproductive system include glands and ducts, where the semen can travel to and through the penis. Epithelial tissue makes up your skin and covers the inside and outside of your organs. It creates a protective layer for your body and your organs and prevents foreign invaders from entering the body unless there is an open wound on the skin. There are different kinds of epithelial tissue throughout your body and are distinguished based on the shape of the cell. There are squamous epithelial cells, which are flat, cuboidal cells, which are cube-shaped, and then there is also columnar cells, which are rectangular shaped. Cuboidal cells line the kidney tubules and portions of the cavity in the kidney. Columnar cells line the small intestines where it will absorb nutrients from our body. Squamous epithelial cells line the blood vessels and parts of the lung. Multiple layers of squamous epithelial cells, reinforced by keratin, make up our skin. Our skin is made up of many layers of squamous epithelial cells. Because these cells are layered, they are said to be stratified. These layers are reinforced with keratin, which strengthens and waterproofs the layers. This provides protection from drying out, severe injuries, and pathogen invasion. Notice the many layers of the flattened cells. These are the stratified squamous epithelial cells that make up our skin. Gila monsters also have epithelial cells on their outer skin as well, except their epithelial cells are arranged into scales that is hardened with keratin, which creates that sharp point on their scales. The human skeleton is made up of 206 bones and are arranged into the axial and the appendicular skeleton. The axial skeleton is all the bones found in your head, chest, and mid-region. This includes the skull, which protects the brain, the vertebral column, making up the spine and the ribcage, which protects the heart and lungs. The appendicular skeleton includes all the bones found in the shoulders, arms, hips, and legs. The blue bones represent the axial skeleton. It consists of the cranium, the zygomatic bone, also known as the cheekbones, and the maxilla and the mandible, which are the upper and the lower jaw bones. The sternum, ribcage, and the vertebral column are also part of the axial skeleton. The white part of the skeleton is the appendicular skeleton. The pectoral bones include the clavicle, which is the collarbone, the scapula, which is the shoulder blade, the humerus, which makes up the upper part of the arm, and the ulna and the radius, which make up the lower arm, and all the bones found in the hand. The pelvic bones include the coxal bones, which are your hip bones, the femur, which is your thigh bone, the tibia and the fibula, which are your shin bones, and all the bones found in the foot. When a long bone is split, you can see the compact bone in the middle and the spongy bone on the end. The compact bone is made up of many osteons. Osteons are made up of bone cells called osteocytes that lie in chambers surrounding a blood vessel. In between the osteocytes are deposits of calcium and phosphorus salts, which help reinforce the bone. Also located in the compact bone are more bone cells called osteoblast and osteoclast. Osteoblasts deposit bone, and osteoclasts secrete enzymes that break down the bone and release calcium into the bloodstream. The spongy bone found at the end of the long bone is made up of many bars and plates that are irregularly spaced. In between these plates and bars are a red bone marrow, which creates red blood cells. This is very similar to the white bone marrow, which creates white blood cells. Within the compact bone, notice the osteocytes that are in tiny chambers arranged in a concentric circle around the blood vessels. Within the spongy bone, notice the irregularly spaced bars and plates, which creates irregular spaces. These spaces are filled with the red bone marrow, which creates the red blood cells that carry oxygen throughout your blood. In Chapter 25, we will talk about the human digestive system and all the organs found within. Our digestive system has 4 functions. The mouth is clearly used to ingest food. The stomach is the primary organ that will break down that food into small molecules so that enzymes can break down the molecules into nutrients. Those nutrients then pass into our intestines where they can be absorbed into the body so that we can use them. And then any food that we cannot digest will be eliminated from the body. The digestive system is a part of the body maintaining an internal environment, which is called homeostasis. The digestive system takes in food and digests it into nutrient molecules that enter the blood. The blood transports the nutrients to the tissues where exchange occurs with the tissue fluid of the respiratory system, urinary system, and others. Here's the human digestive system. The salivary glands release saliva into the mouth where the food is chewed. The food passes through the pharynx into the esophagus and then into the stomach. The liver and the gallbladder work together to release bile to aid in digestion. After the stomach, the food then passes into the small intestine. Here the pancreas secretes digestive juices to further aid in digestion. In the small intestine, 90% of the nutrients and mineral absorption occurs. The food then passes into the large intestine, where water is absorbed. The cecum, appendix, and rectum are all a part of the large intestine. Any leftover waste exits out of the anus. The teeth found within an animal's mouth represents the type of diet that animal eats. The teeth of a carnivore are really sharp because they are needed to break through the tough skin and muscle found in their prey. Herbivores have flat teeth that are made for extensive chewing of plants, trying to break up that cell wall. Omnivores have both kinds of teeth, since they eat both plants and animals. Birds are different though. They actually don't have teeth. They have a specialized organ called a gizzard that will break down the food for them in the same way teeth does for animals. Here you can see the different types of teeth found in carnivores, herbivores, and omnivores. Notice the sharp incisors and molars of the carnivore that really help it tear through that flesh. The incisors and molars of the herbivore, though, are flat, which provide a good surface area for grinding down that cell wall of the plant, allowing them to get into the nutrients of the plant cell. And then omnivores, because we eat both plants and animals, we will have sharp canines, but also flat molars so that we can eat both types of foods. So all of our food contains molecules of carbohydrates, proteins, nucleic acids, and lipids. These macromolecules must be broken down into smaller molecules so that we can absorb the nutrients from our food. Within the digestive system, there is both mechanical and chemical digestion. The tongue and the teeth, as well as the stomach, are all parts of the mechanical digestion that helps break down our food into smaller bits. Chemical digestion is where a bunch of enzymes will come and digest the molecules, particular molecules, into smaller molecules so that our body can actually absorb these smaller molecules into our body. Chemical digestion begins in the mouth with an enzyme called salivary amylase, which is located within our saliva. This breaks down starch, which is a large carbohydrate, into a smaller carbohydrate called maltose. Food moves from our mouth to our stomach through another organ called the esophagus. The esophagus is made up of a couple of different muscle layers that interchangeably will contract, which creates a wave-like motion that pushes the food into our stomach. This wave-like motion is called peristalsis. Also, when we swallow our food, there are coverings that will cover our nasal cavities and our glottis, which leads into our lungs so that we don't get food in our noses or into our lungs. The soft palate is what covers up our nasal cavities, and the glottis the epiglottis is what covers up the glottis, which leads into our larynx, into our lungs. Here you can see the anatomy of the mouth and the throat. Right here, you have the soft palate that will close up that opening to the nasal cavities. Right here, you have the tongue, part of the mechanical digestion of the digestive system. Here you have the glottis, which closes off the opening to the larynx, which leads to our lungs. And then here you have the esophagus. When food is swallowed, the epiglottis closes the entrance to the larynx, and the soft palate closes the entrance to the nasal cavity, which provides a clear passage for the food from the mouth to the esophagus. The next organ we have is the stomach, and the stomach is a 10-inch J-shaped organ located underneath the liver on the left side of the body. It is a place where proteins are digested and food is stored. It has many folds, which disappears as the stomach reaches its max capacity, which is 1 liter. Gastric glands are located along the inside of the stomach, and this produces hydrochloric acid, which promotes the activity of pepsin. And pepsin is an enzyme that breaks down proteins into peptides. The hydrochloric acid causes the stomach to have an acidic pH of 2. If the stomach acid gets into the esophagus, it can result in heartburn. Most of the digestive system is protected by an internal layer of mucus. In the stomach, the mucosal lining protects the stomach muscles. If the mucosal lining were to break down, say by acid-resistant bacteria like H. pylori, then the acid could damage the stomach muscles, creating an ulcer. The stomach is located on the left-hand side of the abdomen, just under the liver. There is a sphincter at the top and at the bottom of the stomach, preventing its contents going into the esophagus and into the small intestines until it's ready. There are 3 layers of muscles: longitudinal, which go up and down, the circular, which goes around the stomach, and then the oblique, which goes diagonally. These muscles all work together to help provide further mechanical digestion to the food. The next place the food passes into is the small intestine, and the small intestine has two functions: to break down the carbohydrates, nucleic acids, and fats from the food we eat, and to absorb these nutrients into the body. Two other organs secrete juices into the small intestines, which helps to aid in the digestion of these molecules. The liver will secrete bile, which contains bile salts. Bile salts break down fat into fat droplets. These fat droplets will then mix with water, which causes them to spread apart. This allows enzymes to further break down the fat. The stomach acid has a low pH, and because of this, the pancreas will secrete sodium bicarbonate into the small intestine to help reduce the pH. The reducing of the pH allows different enzymes to work properly. There is a series of enzymes that will help break down all the various molecules. Like the pancreatic amylase will digest starch into maltose. Trypsin will digest proteins into peptides. Lipase digests fats into glycerol, into the fatty acids. And the nuclease digests nucleic acids into nucleotides. Along the walls of the small intestine are finger-like projections called villi. These villi contain enzymes that further break down maltase and peptides. It breaks down peptides into amino acids and maltase into glucose. These simple nutrients are then absorbed into the body, where they can be used for energy and to make macromolecules. The surface area of the small intestine is increased by three modifications: circular folds, the villi, and the microvilli. The villi gives the small intestine lots of surface area, which allows a lot of the nutrients to be absorbed. The surface area is approximately about the size of a tennis court. Here you can see the internal anatomy of the small intestine. It has a real corrugated appearance because of all of circular folds. The villi are on these circular folds, and then lining the villi are the microvilli. The role of the villi is to absorb nutrients into the body. Each villus has a capillary bed and a lymphatic capillary called a lacteal. Sugars and amino acids are small enough to enter into the blood capillary and are carried to the liver by the hepatic portal system, which is a series of blood vessels leading into the liver. Glycerol and fatty acids, though, are a bit larger, so these have to enter into the lacteal and are eventually dumped into the blood with the lymphatic juices. Absorption of these nutrients occurs by both diffusion and active transport. The digestive tract of carnivores and herbivores are of different lengths. The digestive tract of the carnivore is a lot shorter than that of the herbivore. This is because animal cells are a lot easier to break down than plant cells. Because of the cell wall of the plant cell, it takes a lot longer for the small intestine to break that down to get into the nutrients of the plant cell. The food then passes into the large intestine. The purposes of the large intestine is to absorb water, salts, and some vitamins. It will also store indigestible material until it is ready to be eliminated from the body. There are a lot of large and beneficial bacteria located in the large intestine, including E. coli. E. coli is responsible for breaking down indigestible material and producing some vitamin K, which is very important in blood clotting. There is a blind pouch called the cecum with the appendix, and the cecum is located at the beginning of the large intestine. It is thought that the appendix will hold beneficial bacteria to help prevent infection. When we eliminate feces, we eliminate all the indigestible material that we weren't able to take in from our food. Feces contains about 75% water and 25% solid matter, and about 1/3 of that solid matter is bacteria. A lot of liquid enters into our digestive tract every day. About 1.5 liters of water will enter into our digestive tract from the food and drink that we consume, and about 8.5 more liters are added by all of those digestive glands. Normally, about 95% of this liquid is reabsorbed by the small intestine and about 5% from the large intestine. However, if the person has diarrhea, then the large and small intestines are not able to reabsorb that water, and this leads to a loss of a lot of water. Here you can see the entire anatomy of the digestive system. Here you have the mouth, which chews food, and where the enzyme amylase will break down that carbohydrate starch. Food then passes through the pharynx into the esophagus, where it goes into the stomach, where both mechanical and chemical digestion takes place. The stomach is also responsible for storing food until it is ready to go into our small intestines. The hydrochloric acid from the stomach contains an enzyme called pepsin, which is responsible for the breakdown of proteins found in our food. Food will then pass into the small intestine, where a lot of the nutrients will be absorbed by those microvilli. And there are many different types of enzymes that are delivered to the small intestine by both the liver and the pancreas. From the pancreas, we have the amylase, which breaks down the starch, the trypsin, which breaks down the protein, and the lipase, which breaks down the fat, and the nuclease, which breaks down the nucleic acid. And then you find the bile salts in the bile from the liver that helps break down, or that helps emulsifies the fat, so that the lipase can help break down those fat droplets a lot more. The food then passes all the way into the large intestine, where water, ions, and vitamins are absorbed back into the body. And then the large intestine will also store any indigestible material to be eliminated from the body. The pancreas serves a couple of different functions in both the digestive system and the endocrine system as well. Of course, we know in the digestive system, the pancreas will secrete juices into the small intestine to help the breakdown of those molecules. And because it enters into the small intestine through a duct, the pancreas can be called an exocrine gland. But because the insulin and the glucagon do not enter the bloodstream through a duct, the pancreas can also be known as an endocrine gland. And insulin and glucagon are responsible for regulating the blood sugar of our blood. The liver has numerous functions, which includes detoxifying the blood by removing and metabolizing poisonous substances, producing the plasma proteins such as albumin and fibrinogen, which is responsible in our blood clotting. It will destroy old red blood cells and converts hemoglobin into the substances found in bile, including bilirubin and biliverdin. It produces bile, which is stored in the gallbladder before entering into the small intestine, which we've all already learned emulsifies fats into fat droplets for that lipase enzyme to further break down that fat droplet. The liver also stores glucose as glycogen and breaks down the glycogen into glucose between meals so that we can maintain a regular blood sugar level. And it also produces urea from the amino acids and ammonia. Blood vessels from the large and small intestine merge with each other to make the hepatic portal vein, leading to the liver. This allows the liver to regulate a lot of the chemical components of the blood. The liver will remove excess glucose from the blood vessels, storing it as glycogen. If our blood sugar gets too low, then it will take glycogen and break it down into glucose, and allowing it to enter into our bloodstream. If there is not enough glucose in our body to maintain a normal sugar level, then the liver will convert amino acids into glucose to help raise our blood sugar levels. When there are too many amino acids, the liver will break down the liver will break down the amino acids through a process called deamination. And when amino acids are broken down, it is converted into urea, which is excreted from the body through the kidneys. And fun fact, urea is the most common waste product in humans. Now we'll move on to chapter 29, where we'll talk about the human reproductive system. And in the reproductive system, there are gonads that produce gametes and the sexual hormones, and some accessory organs that help conduct the gametes and also will house the embryo or fetus. Here's the male reproductive system. The testes, which are located in the scrotum, are where the sperm is produced. Sperm move into the epididymis, where they are able to mature. Sperm is then stored in both the epididymis and vas deferens until a male becomes sexually aroused. When this happens, the sperm enters the ejaculatory duct and then goes into the urethra located in the penis. When an erection happens, blood fills the erectile tissue, causing the penis to enlarge and stiffen. The penis contains 3 columns of the spongy erectile tissue that will fill with blood during arousal, causing the penis to become erect. The semen that flows through the penis contains the sperm from the testes and secretions from 3 different glands. The seminal vesicles secrete a thick viscous fluid which will provide nutrients for the sperm. The prostate gland secretes a milky alkaline fluid, which will help increase the pH of any of the uric acid found in the urethra, so that it doesn't harm the sperm. And then the bulbourethral gland secretes a mucus type liquid that allows the sperm to flow through the urethra a lot easier. A sperm was created by the male version of meiosis, called spermatogenesis. This means a sperm is a haploid cell and contains only 1 set of chromosomes. The sperm is composed of 3 distinct parts, including the head, a middle piece, and the tail. The head contains the nucleus and the 1 set of chromosomes, which is surrounded by a membrane called an acrosome. The acrosome contains digestive enzymes that allows the sperm to enter into the egg. The middle piece contains a lot of mitochondria, which produces a lot of ATP for the sperm to swim up the vagina. The tail is the flagellum, and if you guys can remember from last week, the flagellum moves in a corkscrew-like fashion, which helps propel the sperm up the vagina. And the sperm is the only human cell that does contain a flagellum. Males also will produce hormones that help regulate sperm production and the sexual maturity of males. And the hypothalamus, which is a part of the brain, has ultimate control of the testes' sexual function. It secretes a gonadotropin-releasing hormone that helps stimulate the anterior pituitary, which is another part of the brain, to produce the gonadotropic hormones. Both males and females have 2 gonadotropic hormones. In males, the follicle-stimulating hormone will promote the spermatogenesis in the seminiferous tubules of the testes. The luteinizing hormone controls the production of the testosterone by the interstitial cells between the seminiferous vesicles. Testosterone is the main sexual hormone in males. It is essential for the normal development and functioning of the sexual organs. It is also necessary for the maturation of the sperm. It helps bring about and maintains the male secondary sex characteristics that develop during the time of puberty. And these include height, broad shoulders, long legs, a deep voice, the hair found on the face, the chest, and of course muscle development. The female reproductive system is completely separate from the urinary system, unlike we saw in the male reproductive system. It includes the ovaries, fallopian tubes, the uterus, and the vagina. The eggs are created in the ovaries. The egg attaches to the fimbriae and is swept into the fallopian tubes. The fallopian tubes is connected to the uterus. If there was an embryo, the embryo would implant into the endometrium lining of the uterus. When the baby was ready to be born, it would then travel through the vagina to the outside world. The inner lining of the vagina has folds, which allows it to expand so that the baby can pass through. Notice how the two ovaries are not directly connected to the fallopian tubes. When the ovary releases an oocyte, it is swept into the fallopian tubes with the finger-like projections called fimbriae. The fallopian tubes are lined with cells with cilia, which are the small hair-like projections that move in that wave-like form, helping move the oocyte along the tubes. The oocyte, or the egg, will then move into the uterus. The narrow end of the uterus is called the cervix. The cervix remains closed during pregnancy so that the baby will stay inside the uterus and fully develop. When the baby is ready to come, the cervix dilates so that the baby can come out into the vagina. The female version of meiosis is called oogenesis, which is where our oocytes come from. A girl is born with about 1 million different primary oocytes, but about 400 ever actually complete meiosis. The germ cell that gives rise to the primary oocyte is called the oogonium. After the oogonium turns into the primary oocyte, it goes to a part of the ovary called the primary follicle. This is where the primary oocyte will undergo the second stage of meiosis and turn into a secondary oocyte. When it comes time to ovulate, the follicle bursts to release the secondary oocyte into the fallopian tube. The follicle turns into the corpus luteum and waits to see if the oocyte is fertilized. If it isn't, then it degenerates after 10 days. The germ cell, the oogonium, and the primary follicle are both diploid cells, meaning that they have 2 sets of chromosomes. The secondary oocyte, though, is a haploid cell. The secondary oocyte is swept into the fallopian tube where it may or may not be fertilized. The ovarian cycle is made up of 2 different phases. The first stage is the follicular phase, and the second stage is the luteal phase. The follicle-stimulating hormone is responsible for regulating the follicular phase. The follicle-stimulating hormone promotes the development of the follicle containing the oocyte. The follicle will secrete estrogen, and as the estrogen level rises, the level of the follicle-stimulating hormone will decrease. And when the follicle releases the oocyte, this marks the end of this particular phase. The luteinizing hormone will cause the follicle to turn in the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum will then causes the levels of progesterone to increase, which in turn causes the levels of the luteinizing hormone to decrease. If the oocyte is fertilized, then the corpus luteum will continue to secrete progesterone. But if fertilization does not occur, then that corpus luteum will degenerate, and then the menstrual cycle will begin. During the first 14 days of the menstrual cycle, the follicle-stimulating hormone released by the anterior pituitary promotes the maturation of follicles in the ovary. Ovarian follicles produce increasing levels of estrogen, which causes the endometrium to thicken. After ovulation, the luteinizing hormone causes the primary follicle to turn into the corpus luteum. This structure produces increasing amounts of progesterone, which causes the endometrium lining to thicken more and the uterine glands to secrete mucus, which helps prepare the endometrium for the embryo. If there is not an embryo, then the corpus luteum degenerates, which causes the amount of progesterone to drop. When these levels reach a certain low, then the endometrium sheds and the menstrual cycle begins.